My name is David Fladd, and just a couple brief things about me. A lot of you probably don't know me. A couple of you do. And I'm the co-owner of iStrike Fishing. If you ever fished a Trout eye jig or a Texas eye jig, one of the Z-Man products, that's actually our product, iStrike. I'm the designer of those jigs. Picked it up I think 2014 is when we started the company. But I also am the founder of a program called Release Over 20, which is a nonprofit. Just show of hands, have you all heard of Release Over 20 before? Okay, a lot of people that have, that's good. I hope this is interactive. I want you to stop me and ask questions. I'll do better if I'm not just talking to an empty void. But I'm an engineer by trade. I'm not a guide. I'm just an avid recreational fisherman. And my business partner in iStrike Fishing is a guy named Ralph Phillips. Have you heard of Ralph? You all know him? He's one of 3 original guides here in Charleston. And if you know Ralph, he's a big trout fisherman, and he's kind of legendary, right, Andy? So I kind of blame him for putting the bug in me, where you've fished long enough, you've caught all your fish, you sort of figured out what to do. You're always looking for, the beauty of fishing is there's always a new challenge, right? It could keep you busy your whole life. So you get to a point where you want to challenge yourself, and one way to do that is just targeting like the bigger trout and not the schoolie trout. So I've had, a chance to catch a few of those. One more thing is that I'm also glad to have been appointed to the Saltwater Recreational Fisheries Advisory Committee, which is a branch of the DNR. It's made up of one person from every coastal county in the state, and our role is to approve the money that comes in from fishing licenses and make sure that it's being used in a way that benefits us, the anglers. So it's kind of cool to have that link with the DNR, where I kind of have, first name basis, kind of a closer contact where I can ask questions and get a lot of the information back. And we're going to talk about it in later slides, but a lot of things that we don't know as anglers is some of the facts about the biology behind the fish. Why? Because they're buried in research papers, and you have to look at like page 69 in some paragraph to find out like the details about how trout actually spawn, for example. So one of the things that we're doing with Release Over 20 is trying to get that information out to people in little sound bites so that they are now aware of it, because it makes the desire and the need to release fish kind of a no-brainer. So we'll talk about that in a bit. So one thing I wanted to talk about first is that this is a seminar on artificial lure fishing. It's not about bait fishing. Nothing against people who bait fish, but again, if you know Ralph, like he'll sort of make fun of you, and he'll tell you if you're bait fishing, you're just feeding the fish. Go buy an aquarium, because it doesn't count. You got to fool that fish into biting. And the other thing is, pond fish, to me, don't count. Now it's great and it's fun to catch a fish. That's a 27-inch trout. You can see it's not very healthy. It's pretty skinny. But obviously you see that the trunk in the background. Great fish. You can catch a 30-inch trout here in South Carolina, but if you catch it in a pond, I'm sorry, it doesn't get my respect. It's just, it's like fish in a barrel. So just to set the stage here, you got to catch these fish in the wild to get my respect anyway. Now that being said, if you do want to catch a really big fish, in my opinion, the best way to do it, the easiest way to do it, is to put a live menhaden under a popping cork and throw it over some heavy structure and just let it swim. And that thing will swim around and kind of be like panicking, and those big trout cannot deny that thing. And I have a picture. I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it. And it's when I first started fishing, I didn't know what I was doing. We were just kind of doing what I just told you. We were floating menhaden under a cork. That thing went down, and I gave it to my 3-year-old son, and he reeled that thing in. And it's a picture of him, the huge smile. It's a 25-inch trout, just like hanging over his hands like that. But that's how it was caught, on a menhaden under a float.
How deep of water was that when you were doing the menhaden?
4 or 5 feet. I'm going to talk about the kind of location where you might want to find, or you will find trout in just a little bit. So I wanted to take a little bit and talk about some of the science behind what we know about big trout. If you haven't downloaded this manual, it's available free at the DNR website. It's dnr.sc.gov. It's an excellent resource. In fact, there's one for flounder, there's one for redfish, and sheepshead as well. And what they are is a conglomeration of all the research and all the things that we know about the species, plus how to fish for them. And the co-author is become one of my good friends, John Archambault. He's a great trout fisherman as well. In fact, yesterday he caught a 24-incher, which is on a lure. So this is a chart pulled from that publication, and it shows interesting chart of this is how they catch a fish, and then they measure the otolith, which is the ear bone, and they can tell how old it is. And it's a chart of length versus years. So what's clearly apparent is that the females are a lot larger than the males. The males get 20, 21 inches. If they get beyond that, if you catch a 22 or 23-inch fish and it croaks, that's a male. That's a very old fish. That's a gator trout. Like, it's a very, very, very rare fish. The females are the big ones. Almost always over a 20-inch trout is going to be a female. And you can see that they also get 8 or 9 years old, about how old it's ever going to get. But it's an interesting chart, and we'll talk about the significance of it in a minute. But again, these are some facts that I've pulled from the research. And one is that to appreciate how rare is a 20-inch trout, and this, I'll talk about the significance of 20 in a minute, but if you, based on the research, about 75% of the total biomass is lost every year. So, and that's due to angling pressures, predation, and who knows what else. But for whatever reason, about 75% die every year. So what that means is if you start theoretically with 1,000 trout at year 0, after 4 years, there's only going to be 8 of them left. Now imagine a 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. How rare is that trout? A 20-inch trout is 8 in 1,000. So they're very rare and special when you catch a big trout. I want you all to appreciate that. The other thing is that a 20-inch trout spawns 20 million eggs a season, and it's they're mostly all female and 20 million eggs a season. As they get bigger, it's exponentially even more. So I don't remember the full progression, but a 21-inch is probably 25 million eggs a season. A lot of people, including myself, never knew that. So you can imagine that trout swimming every year is a huge benefit to being back in the water. What I mentioned about this 4 years, at 4 years, well, that 4-year-old fish is 20 inches. That's why that number's important. So these are things that on Release Over 20 we keep putting out so that people know it. And this is South Carolina specific. It's a little bit different depending on where in the country. Like, for example, Virginia fish we now know grow faster, and so do like Texas fish. So a 20-inch might be 3 years old in those estuaries. So here's another thing, spawning. So forever I thought that the trout spawned on the full moon in May. Like, I don't know why I had that in my head, like that was like the big spawn. And then I was talking to one of my friends, Justin Carter, and he said, yeah, it was like May something. And he's like, yeah, I caught this big trout and it was all spawned out. And I was like, what? So I got a hold of John Archambault, who's on that thing, and I said, what do we know about spawning? I've heard podcasts all around the country, and I heard 10 different people say as a fact how trout spawn, and they're all wrong. The research, and I have the paper to back it up, but John gave me an education on this. A female will spawn every 4 to 5 days. from the beginning of the spawning season, which is like mid-May, till almost October. And they'll peak in the late, like they'll peak in May or June, and then they'll kind of dip off a little bit, and then they'll peak again in September. So as that water temperature gets just right. So every night is a spawn, and it's in the harbor in certain locations. It's in the book. They know this because they can drop a microphone down and hear the croaking, and it's like a conglomeration of fish. But that female will just, like, you know, she'll spawn some of her eggs, she'll go out, feed hard, and then come back 5 days later and spawn again. So it's all, and it goes from like dusk until 11 o'clock at night, every night. So they're serial spawners. These eggs are just broadcast every night. Sometimes it might be outgoing tide, and those eggs will probably go out in the ocean. Sometimes it's incoming. Sometimes, you know, maybe the flow will take it up to Ashley, or they're just making eggs constantly all season long. So that's the real truth about what they do when they spawn. So this is an interesting chart. This is not a theoretical chart. This is actual data from Release Over 20, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but basically what we're doing with Release Over 20 is we're having people release fish and send us the information about how long it was and what state they were in, basically. So the cool thing is that over time we have a database of thousands of fish, and we can break it down by the length and when it was released. So this is an interesting thing because we start at 20. We don't accept fish that are under 20 in our program. But how rare is that 30-inch trout? Well, it's a perfect bell curve. And you can see that 30-inch trout, which a lot of people call a dirty 30, is literally a fish of a lifetime. It's a 1 in a million fish. It's a more valuable than a diamond. Like that is a beautiful survivor. You know, it's just something to be fully respected. And you can imagine if a 20-inch trout is 8 in 1,000, how rare is that 30-incher? It's just, it's amazing. But when I put this data together, I was blown away with how perfect it looks. You know, it's like, so anecdotally here in South Carolina, like I've never heard of anyone catching a 30. I mean, the state records, I think maybe 30. But I hear maybe 1 or 2 fish a year, 27, 28 being caught. And those are by people that I know that target big trout, and it's pretty accurate. There's only a handful a year caught that size. And I was like, that's interesting. I wonder how it compares to, like, say, Texas. This is also real data. And it proves out that anecdotal data is for real. Our 27, 28 is as rare as a 30 in Texas. And I'm excluding pond fish, by the way. We've had a few big pond fish entered, but they don't count. But it's interesting that you don't see as many, the frequency of the lower fish coming in from Texas, because they're so common there that people don't even bother to enter them for the most part. Like if you're out wading in the Laguna Madre and you catch 30 over 20 inches, you're probably not going to enter those fish. It's just too much of a hassle, right? But if you catch that special one, you're going to go to the trouble of entering it. But that I thought was kind of cool. So I want to talk about Release Over 20 a little bit. So I started this program officially in year 2000, 2020, right about the time of COVID starting. But I've been doing this myself for 15 years. And the reason was that I got frustrated that there wasn't an upper slot law in South Carolina. And I was told that just if you know much about how our laws are made, it's probably never going to happen. So I got frustrated, and I remember just being frustrated and wondering, like, you know, what could I do about it? And it sounds, in hindsight, it sounds stupid and obvious, but it was an epiphany to me. And I was like, well, why can't I just make my own upper slot and then follow it? And then every fish that's over that length is automatically going back as if it was the upper slot in South Carolina. Nothing's stopping me from doing that and doing it today. Start now and tell people why I'm doing it. Maybe they'll do it too. And I did it. You know, some people who follow like charlestonfishing.com might remember me like posting a few times like, I caught a 21-inch trout and I released it like I release all my trout over 20. And not really knowing, because it wasn't much social media then, over time I had people come to me and say, oh, I do that too because I follow what you do. And I was like, that's cool. And I was talking about it just like we are right now. And I got contacted by CCA in North Carolina, and they said, you need to make this something bigger because it really resonates with us, and I think it will with other people. And that kind of kicked me in the pants to make it more of a thing. So I started this and just doing it like nights and weekends on my own time. And it grew so much I decided to make it into a nonprofit. And I was doing it using like all of our resources for ice strike fishing, and I didn't want it to be intermeshed so people thought I was doing it for a personal profit. So I decided to spin it off into its own thing. It's got to be fully transparent. We have legal reasons we need to like account for the money. And although ice strike's a sponsor, it's no different than any other sponsor right now. So that's the kind of the backstory to it. But the whole reason for it is like it makes sense to release big fish. They're the spawning biomass. They're usually the big fish are females. And it's just the right thing to do for the future. You can imagine, I always say this, like imagine two futures, right? Imagine a future where we decimate all the fish. You buy your $50,000 bay boat, you go out, you're all excited to go fishing, you grind all day, you might catch 3 or 4 fish. The alternative is what people like my partner Ralph's in the back, what Ralph experienced 20 years ago, where there was so much of an abundance of fish you could think you'd never put a dent in it. Well, we can get back there if we all just kind of voluntarily, keep a few for dinner, fresh, whatever, but forget the law, like make your personal law a lot more restrictive, and just start releasing bigger fish especially, but even maybe more of the fish that you would normally keep. Don't ever put them in the freezer, for example. But that's the motivation behind it. And now, if you look at our mission, you'll notice it says nothing about 20 inches. And it says nothing about speckled trout. It's about all fish. So, and if you want to know information, we have a booth over here. We'd love to come talk to you about it. We're here the whole weekend. But it's not, Release Over 20 is not just about trout. It's also about flounder and sheepshead right now, and we're going to be adding more species in the future as resources allow. But flounder is an interesting case because it's a hard sell for people to release fish, but I want to explain why it's really important. In fact, it's more important than trout to release flounder. Here is the result of trammel net surveys from DNR for the past 30 years. And it's literally like a nosediving. And well, if you look at the data, it's obvious why. Every keeper flounder is female. Now, I myself did not know this until I researched it, but the males only max out at about 14 inches. They just don't grow very large, but there's not really any meat on it, so you have to make a lower slot somewhere. Well, it's currently 16 inches, which means every keeper flounder is a female. And in my experience, or just anecdotally asking people, most people when they catch a keeper, they keep it because it's delicious to eat. However, we shouldn't be surprised that this is happening when we're killing all the females. So one suggestion is a release over 20, make an upper slot. Keep an 18, release a 20. The 20s, there's not that many 20s, but if we all start doing this, it won't be long until there's a lot of 20s. And if you catch a 9 or 10 pound flounder, don't tell me you wouldn't be thrilled to catch that and just get a picture and release it, because wouldn't that be cool to have a lot of giant flounder around? But here again, this is just the data to back up. So here's 15 inches. The males just max out at a lot smaller size. We also include sheepshead. And here's another fact that I think a lot of people don't know, is that they really slow down in their length with age. So at 18 it might be 5 years old, but at 20 is 10 years old. So a large sheephead is a very, very old fish. Now, here in South Carolina, we don't really have such a problem with overfishing of sheepshead because not so many people actually target them, and we have a lot of structure. I think there's just a bumper crop of them here. But other parts of the country, it is a big problem. There's not as many places that hold them, and people are just wiping the the areas out where you can't even catch one that's big anymore. So like they were some of the people that sort of encouraged us to add sheepshead. So I'm going to breeze through these kind of quick, but we could talk about them later. But here's how we set this thing up to work. We've got a website, releaseover20.org, and you can go to this site. You can put it on your phone or whatever. When you catch a fish, all we ask is if it's over 20, just need a picture of it. We don't have to have it on a ruler. We're not going to police it. We can tell by the picture if it's big enough. Like if you enter this little fish, we're just going to delete your entry. But it's an honor system. And so far, no one's really messed with it at all. But you put it in our database, and then you can opt to receive free decals. It costs you nothing. And then we also enter you in a drawing. So here's a typical month of decals going out. It's like 120, goes all around the country. And we also have these little helmet decals, and what they're kind of like on a, like a bomber pilot's got their kills lined up, or a football player's got their plays. Every time you release one, you can choose to get one of these decals. And there's times we put 20 of them in a monthly envelope for someone. And what I do is I line them up on the inside of the gunwale of my boat. So I just kind of, by every year, I can see how many trout I released that year. But it's kind of a fun thing to do. A lot of people put them on like their wall, their fishing wall or something. But we've lined up, if you look at this list, some really heavy hitter sponsors. These are companies that just they believe in what we're doing, just wanted to be involved, and all we ask is that they send us some of their merchandise. And we keep it, and then what we do is a giveaway, and that's on the right. It's a typical one of 4 giveaways we do every month. And every entry that comes in for the month it's kind of like a raffle ticket. So we do a live giveaway on our social media, and we just do a random roll of the dice, pick a winner. We pick 4 winners every month, and they'll win a big pack. And just for doing the right thing, just practicing conservation, just doing it. And I think since we started, we've given away about $15,000 worth of stuff. Had a few double winners, people that are entering fish all the time. Had several kids win. And then the cool thing is the data. So we have real-time data on our website. As soon as you enter that fish in the database, these numbers update. And this is like a top 10 national leaderboard for anglers. So this guy, Chad Gonzalez, this is current month, has entered like 17 fish. And it takes 6 to get in the top 10 so far. Those numbers will grow as the month goes on. And then right now, currently we have Texas has got the most entries. I didn't mention, this is a nationwide, well, it's at least a Gulf Coast and Atlantic Seaboard nonprofit. We're not just South Carolina. In fact, South Carolina is here. This is all time. So we have this guy. So these people in the top 10 have become like celebrities among the people that follow us. So Corey Mayo is in Virginia Beach. He's had 330 fish entered in the program. And here, this is really interesting. Look at Virginia compared to everyone else in the country. They're dunking on the rest of the country. And these are mostly trout. Like, I don't know, if y'all follow like trout fishing, I've traveled to 3 states just to target big trout because it's not here. Like, let's be honest, we don't have big trout in South Carolina in relatively. I wouldn't have known that Virginia is the trout capital of the world. I would have picked Florida or Texas. But the truth is, it's Virginia Beach area, Chesapeake Bay. Just kind of going back to the biology and like when you have a big fish that's the 1 in 10,000 fish, there's also another reason why that thing is probably still alive. It's got maybe superior genetics, like it's able to withstand disease or withstand the cold or who knows what. Like maybe it's smarter, maybe it grows faster than the other ones. But putting that back in the water is perpetuating those genetics. Well, an example of how that works is Virginia have a different kind of trout than we have. It's the same species, But those trout live in 43, 42 degree water. Like they can survive, where ours will die at 47 or so, 46. Those fish travel up and down the coast. Like they'll go all the way to North Carolina and back and forth, where ours are kind of staying in our estuary. But that's evolution and genetics. That's how fish can change if we keep selecting for the right genes we want to perpetuate. I don't want to delay this too much further, but we also have a state page where you can go to a state. And we've got a whole bunch of data that comes from the database. Again, it's all updated in real time. So we have a South Carolina leaderboard. The more fish you release, you'll start rising up that leaderboard. And we also have a number of guides that participate, and we have a guide leaderboard as well. And these are guides who enter fish for their clients. So we're trying to get guides more involved with what we're doing. So you can all check this out on our board. So any idea what this number is? If you know it, don't answer, but any guesses?
Inch of fish released.
What's that?
Inches of fish.
Good guess. It's not that though. Any others? So this is another number on our website. It's updated in real time. And what it is if you were to take every fish, every trout entered in our program, and you count it only one season, and you count the eggs it spawned, and add those up, the number is 161 billion eggs spawned. So it's just a mind-boggling number when you think about in a season. One trout, 20 inches is 20 million eggs. So you could argue that, well, maybe that fish died, or maybe, you could look at both sides of it. But if it was a 25-inch trout, it's going to spawn even more than 20 million eggs. So it's just a fun number to look at, but it's kind of an eye-popping number to think about. So, yeah.
So are you guys doing anything with like tag and release with DNR, but maybe with release over 20, where they would have your website and they can call in and then you can go, oh yeah, this fish was caught last year, 2 years ago?
We're not, and the only reason is that trout, we don't include trout in tagging here. They used to, but they don't retain tags well, that they pop out. And they also, trout they die a lot when you release them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, how to avoid that too. But it's mostly, yeah.
Are there any coastal states that have a slot limit on trout?
Yeah, Florida, Texas, Louisiana. Look, most of them do. Yep, we're one of the few that don't. The discussion of how laws are made here is an interesting one that's probably we could do offline. It's backward. It's very backwards.
My wife used to be a lobbyist.
Yeah.
I know.
Y'all might have seen this a couple years ago, so it's interesting how these came to be. We have released over 20 billboards. A year ago, they were all over town. I just need to get back with these guys and try to get them to run them again, but it costs us nothing. One of our sponsors is Adams Outdoor Advertising. Well, this is interesting because if you go back to that national leaderboard, one of them's name is Medel Medrano. He's from Virginia. Well, guess who he works for? Adams. And he said he got hold of me because he won our giveaway. It made a big impression on him. He said, I work for Adams, I want to run billboards. We'll do it as a public service announcement. Let's just make some art. And we'll do it in South Carolina too. I know a guy there. So we were running these for a while, and what we were doing was they were asking me to send in some of the pictures that they sent us when they entered their fish. And the whole thing was, well, you might also get your face on a billboard. Well, we had, this is Stephen Trainer from I think he's from Myrtle Beach area on the right, that live billboard. And we had a few local guys here, and they actually would drive 2 hours down here just to get their picture, by the billboard. But super cool, and it's just funny how you never know the contacts you're going to make, But pretty impressive. So this is our guide program. We just started. We kicked this off, and we're trying to get guides to sort of partner with us on it, and we're sending them like a guide pack there, a whole big stack of decals, and also all their clients that catch and release a fish get entered into a special giveaway drawing. So now we're doing just a client giveaway only. So there's incentives for the guides and also for the clients. You noticed on a couple pages ago, on our South Carolina page, we have a list of all the charter captains that signed up, and also a top 10 or like an all-time leaderboard. So it incentivizes the guides to enter more of their fish because they climb up the leaderboard. Well, here's the thought. It's like if I'm going to travel to Florida, I want to go with a guide that supports release over 20. So I'm going to go to that Florida page. Here's all the guides. Well, here's this guy released 45 fish. I'm going to call him, and here's his contact information right there. So it's a business incentive for the guides as well. We have an event kind of like this, but this will be the second year, called Cast It Forward, and it's a post and courier event, and it's kind of a celebration of conservation. So it's food trucks, live bands, vendors, talker, and a bunch of speakers talking about how to target big trout and big flounder and whatever, and wildlife biologists talking about the science and stuff like that. And last year, our headliner was C.A. Richardson, who's here, not in this room, but he's here at the event. He gave a great talk, and I also had Captain Matt Chipperfield from Jacksonville, Florida, who catches a bunch of giant fish. In fact, he put me and Ralph on two of our biggest of our lives last year. And he gave a great talk about just the lunar periods and how to target big trout. And the cool thing was that CA was sitting in the front row, and he raised his hand when it was question time, and he said, Captain Matt, what are you doing in February? He's like, I don't know, what do you mean? He's like, how about you be on an episode of Flats Class TV? And he's like, what? So they actually did it. They filmed it. The show's out there. It turned out great. He put CA on a big giant. So another thing that's kind of cool about the connections. By the way, this was the fish I just talked about that Matt put me on last year. It's a 29-incher. So the other one is from Texas. That was 28. Those are my two biggest fish, but they're not here in South Carolina, right? You travel. We're not a mecca for big trout, but I'm going to transition to targeting big trout. And here I'm talking about, let's say, 23 inches plus. You know, that's a pretty significant fish for here. Anyone can catch one by, you're just out there fishing. Suddenly you're gonna catch a big fish, and you're gonna be like, wow, look at that trout. But to catch them on purpose requires dedication and a lot of research and like targeting and like really being specific, grinding all day for that big bite. They're literally unicorns, like we talked about. There's just not that many of these trout that size out there. So if you want to target them, you're going to really work hard for it. In fact, all the trips that I've had, like those last two fish, were one fish out of 10,000 casts in a day. I mean, just all day, cranking line, nothing. Hope for that one bite, right? It's suddenly, poof, and you're hooked up, and it's like, oh my God, it's such an adrenaline rush to catch that giant fish. And that's what keeps people coming back, just grinding your butt off all day just for that one fish, I found there's like a handful of trout guys here in Charleston that I've become friends with, and you sort of work hard to gain their trust, and they gain the trust in you. And once you sort of get past that, okay, this guy's not going to go tell everyone the information, and you're going to start sharing, well, hey, I was here and I found this happen, and you start getting in that group and sort of sharing information. It's kind of cool. So, I think we good so far? Okay, time check. I've found the big trout, and I'm not talking about the average everyday 17-incher, but the big trout tend to like hard, gnarly structure, like the jetties, like rocky pilings, like riprap, crusty pilings, hard bottoms. Just the nastiest kind of crap you could find is generally where I'm finding big fish, and there's examples of it all over Charleston Harbor. Go look anywhere; it's everywhere, right? This is something that was told to me by. Did anybody know who Bob Sanders is? Have you ever heard of the original trout trick? Anyone? Yeah, some of you, yeah. So he was the guy who sort of discovered the original trout trick, and he became one of my first fishing mentors. He was a great guy. He's passed away, unfortunately. He had a stroke a few years ago, but he told me this, and I listened carefully, and it's proven true to me over and over and over again, that this is the anatomy of a good trout spot. Like I think you mentioned, like, okay, how deep, who said how deep is the water? Yeah. So a good trout spot, and this is Bob Sanders talking, is got a flat with a hard bottom that doesn't go dry at low tide. It's always got water on it. It's adjacent to deep water. And if I think about all my best trout spots, they all meet that description. And if you're ever in a spot where like you can't hold anchor, or you're always getting hung up on stuff, or you know it's like crusty, hard bottom, and you look around and it's got all those, the anatomy of this spot, it's probably going to hold trout. Some time of the year, some tide, but I would hit that spot hard because it's probably going to hold trout. And it's true. Like, there's so many examples of it all around town. But that's 100% the right thing. And this is a good story. I'm smirking at Ralph over there because this is a great story, wasn't it? Absolutely. This day is still living rent-free in my head because we had Joey P. from Z-Man. He's out there at the booth. And Ralph and I were fishing with Joey, and we were fishing in an area. It wasn't a great day. It was just like an average. We were catching a few here and there, picking at them. And then all of a sudden, the wind shifted to the south, and it picked up to like 20 miles an hour in a matter of like 15 minutes, where it was a pretty good day for fishing, and then it was like pretty awful. Well, we decided, let's go, we caught a few on this bank, let's go make another pass. And remember, Ralph? It was 30 minutes of catching 20-plus inch trout, just like every cast. We had, I think, a 21, 22, 23. I don't know if we had a 24, so we had multiple 22 plus. And that's the proof. I mean, that's that same day. There's Joey taking the picture. There's me holding one. And then it shut off. 30 minutes and then done. So what happened? Like, think about that. Those fish were there the whole time. They just weren't eating. They were probably checking our lures going on, just like, no, not eating. And then something triggered the bite, and then they fed voraciously for that 30-minute window, and then it stopped. And we couldn't catch a fish after that happened. So I still don't know what it was. I had all my friends saying, next time you catch a big trout, tell me what the pressure was doing, barometric pressure. And I'm like, all right, well, the answers were all over the map. There was no correlation.
Which way was the wind blowing, into the bank or
Away from the bank.
away from the bank?
So I still don't really know what the hell happened, but all I know is those fish fed in a window and then it stopped. So here's why it lives rent-free in my head. If you're not in the right place at the right time, you missed it, right? You're not going to catch. You wouldn't if we weren't there at that time with the right rod and reel and lures. It never would have happened. So if you ever find yourself in that, where you get in that window and you're suddenly catching big trout, happened to me 2 years ago. I just had a COVID shot, and I was like, well, my day's shot, I'm just going to go fishing. And I stayed out till the sun went down, and I threw a topwater plug, and I got, it was like a 21-incher. And then I caught another one, and I had 6 that day. And it was just the same thing, 30, 40 minutes, done. I kind of like chalked that up as like, this is a highlight of my life. You found that window, everything was there. But that, to me, just the implications of that sticks with me because, like I said, it's a grind, man. If you know that fish are in that general area, you might have to stay there all day and cast all day and not get a bite. But then when it turns on, you're going to get rewarded with that giant. And then who cares, because that just made your year, That's what it takes to catch a big trout. So let's talk a little bit about patterns, roughly patterns. This time of year, those fish are going to push up. Not all of them. I still catch some in the harbor, but man, they'll push way up into fresh water. I say fresh water, but it's not really fresh water, but it is fresh water. Like so, if you know about salt water versus fresh water, salt water is heavier than fresh water. So if you go into a creek, even the ones that are normally fresh water, and you hear people talk about, well, they're going to catch them in the deep holes. Well, why is that? That's where the salt water is. You know, trout need salt water, and they're usually going to be in the deepest part of the creeks because probably that's where the salt water is. You know, and Ralph will attest to this, but we always make fun of people because at this time of year, we watch people going down the middle of the creek cast to the bank like they always do, but they're driving right over the fish because they're in the middle of the bottom of the creek. So you want to hug the bank and cast to the middle and fish that 15 feet of water in the dead center of the creek because that's where the bites are going to be. So here you see at the top of the Ashley River, we've caught fish. You wouldn't believe how high up in the Ashley River we've caught trout. Way up the Cooper, way at the top of the Wando. Now the Wando doesn't get as much fresh water as the other two rivers, but I wanted to show this picture because this is a trip I took to North Carolina to fish with a guy named Ricky Kellum, aka the Speckled Specialist. And I was with Captain Justin Carter from Redfin. We decided to go up there and just try to catch a big trout because that's what he's known for. Well, look at the terrain and look at how dark that fish is. This was caught in pure fresh water. Like we just caught a jackfish like right before that. Now most people think their trout will not go up into fresh water. This was way the hell up a creek in the freaking swamp. And that's where we finally caught a big trout. So if you this time of year, if you're looking to like, especially like right about this time of year, January, don't be afraid to go try the real fresh water. On the converse, like I mentioned about the spawning, it happens like starting in like April, May. Well, those fish are spawning in the harbor. They're probably not going to venture too far from there, right? So you want to focus more in the coastal areas, in the ICW, in the harbor, in the warmer months. So those are two just general trends. Any questions about that? Okay. Yeah.
Like about approximately what temperature are you looking at when that
The spawning.
water temperature?
Water temps usually like high 60s, low 70s, I think, around that time. So talk a little bit about lures. I brought some examples. I talk about suspending lures here a little bit, but I want to give a caveat. And so here's an example of just a lipped diving bait that suspends. This is a Uzuri. Doesn't really matter. There's all kind of varieties of them, but to be honest, I've caught most of my big trout on these lures. Although, admittedly, I don't fish them much anymore. I can't even tell you why. I need to start doing it again. I used to fish them a lot, but you're not going to catch as many fish. You won't catch really it won't select for the mid-sized fish as much, but you will get usually a bigger trout on that. Something they can't resist about that thing slashing and then stopping. It's like they gotta hit it. And the same is true with topwater. So I have 4 examples here. The skitter walk, it's got a real low pitch to it, a great big ball bearing in it. Everyone knows this one, the Spook Junior, super popular. A little bit higher pitch, smaller profile. This is another one I've grown to like, the One Knocker. It's got another big ball bearing in it. But this has become, I think Daniel Nussbaum from Z-Man turned us on to this. This is a Skitter V. It's a relatively new plug. It's got its issues, like it's got a low ball bearing, but for some reason, like that front hook tends to get wrapped in the line a lot. It's got kind of like a bigger walk. It takes a little bit to sort of get the cadence going until it starts working right. So it doesn't always behave the way you want it to. But the proof's in the pudding. The fish just freaking love this thing. They kill it. But the reason I have all these different plugs is that I really believe that the color doesn't matter. It's more about the profile and the sound. it's like you want to have all these plugs in your arsenal, and if you got a buddy with you, don't be throwing the same thing. You hear this a lot in seminars, but it's totally true. Like, put 2 totally different things on and see what the fish like that day, and then switch to it. And this is a good variety of ones that I've known to work really well, and that's why I keep them in here. But day to day, overall, the first one I'm reaching for is the Skitter V. So I highly recommend you pick some of those up. And they do select for larger fish mostly. Okay, so yeah,
So you go with the big trout that you want to release.
yeah,
Your thoughts on replacing the treble hook that gets kind of nasty with a single hook?
yes.
And hookup ray, et cetera?
That, not just that, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but also you want to mash some barbs down, which not many people do, but it takes 2 seconds. Everyone can do it with their pliers. Just bend the barb down, even if it's got a little hump there, and it won't make much of a difference in the fish landed, but it makes a huge difference in being able to release them fast. So great suggestion. And a lot of people are doing that, going to circle hooks like instead of trebles, which is a very good thing to do. So I wanted to show, so I told you I'm co-owner of iStrike. These are 3 profiles that I personally like to fish for trout with. And two of the 3 I have the actual lure that I caught the fish with here, and the third one I didn't. But this is probably my all-time #1 favorite lure for pretty much everything. It's just a pure white pearl Z-Man minnows on a trout eye jig. And that was used to catch that one in the upper corner. And that was up on a flat that was hard bottom, doesn't go dry at low tide, near deep water. And I've just thrown up along the grass line and thought I had a redfish, like most big trout are mistaken for a big redfish. And that thing came up, and I just about had a heart attack. And that was I think at the time, my biggest fish. Look how fat it was. That was probably a late spring fish, but full of eggs. The second one there is a Texas eye with, this is like the lure I fish with almost every day, day in, day out, with different color trailers. But this is our Texas eye with a 4-inch scented jerk shad. And I just didn't have the color that I used in my tackle box last night, so I just threw this one on there. But the one I like the most for trout is called Nuked Pilchard. It's a blue back and a white belly. In fact, that's what I caught. That was on a smoky shad. You can see it right there in the mouth. But that was on a heavy structure area. Same description, hard bottom, near deep water. That's an all-time confidence lure for me. And then dead of winter, this is our Texas eye finesse with a 3-inch slim swim. And this is the exact color called Space Guppy that I used to catch this fish. And then full disclosure, that was at the jetties. Just fishing it along the rocks, and then bam, just catch a giant. So this is our setup, and I should have Ralph come and talk about this because this is a full attribution to Ralph. I've been very fortunate that I've had, I'm going to embarrass Ralph right now, I've had the luxury of being like Ralph's apprentice for the last 10 years. And he's taught me everything he knows about trout fishing, and especially technique. I don't think I was gifted with a good feel, so I've had to work really hard on my feel. And I think the first trip we took together, like he was watching me fish, and he's like, "You just missed one." I'm like, "What?" And it was because I wasn't using the right technique. So I've been, as an engineer, I'm very observant. I'm very analytic. I'm like watching him the whole time to see what I'm doing wrong and what he's doing right. And he's coached me to this technique. And here I brought an example. Y'all can look at this afterwards. But this is my #1 all-time favorite rod and reel setup. This is a G. Loomis Walleye Series rod, and I like. I don't really go with like the conventional wisdom with rods. I like a very fast tip. This tip is not super limber, and the reason I like it so much is that I feel like whatever I do to the end of this thing is exactly translating to the lure at the end of the line. And it's not a delay or like a buggy whip kind of thing. It's like a more direct contact. And people will say, well, what about their soft mouth? You know, that's not ideal, and it's the truth, it's not. But I'll just lighten my drag up, and I'll thumb the drag with my thumb to get past the tearing out of the mouth kind of thing. But this is a 13 fishing Concept C2 bait caster. It's got a real long cast. And then you can see I got one of those suspending lures on it, but y'all can come look at this. I think I had Haddrell's special order this rod for me because they didn't have it, but I highly recommend that Walleye Series rod. And I think I got this because Ralph, wasn't it your favorite? Yeah, so I kind of wanted to get one also, and it's to this day, and I've had a number of different kind of rods. They're all high end. It's still my favorite. So let's talk about technique real quick. I'm not going to go too long into this, but this is the key. If you get nothing else out of this thing, you want to catch more fish than artificial, whether it's big trout or little. Manage your line. So what I mean by that is most people, when they're sort of retrieving, jigging up, they'll jig up and then they'll drop their rod tip, and you'll get this big bow in your line. Well, the fish are almost always going to hit when that jig's coming up and it starts to drop. That's when they're going to hit it. Well, if you think about when you drop that rod tip, that's when the lure's dropping, bow in your line. That's when they're going to hit it, and if you're not in contact, you're going to miss it. And I will tell people, like, if you fish with artificials a lot and you haven't caught a big trout, I almost guarantee you've had a trout, a big trout, and you totally missed it. You never knew you had it. It probably sucked it in, spit it out, and you never knew it. Because I'm telling you that I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but so here's what I believe is happening. The bigger the trout, the softer the bite, and it's probably because their mouth is so big compared to the lure. Like, have you ever been fishing and felt like you got a bite and you brought the lure back in and it looked like this? Well, that was a trout. And I never knew why until y'all follow Saltstrong? Yeah, you remember, right?
Yes.
Did you see the trout video?
Yes.
Yes. Epiphany. They put a camera on a line in a place in Florida where it's clear water and they could sort of watch the lure swimming along. And the mystery to me was solved because you'd see the trout come up, follow this thing behind, and what they do is they hit it with the top of their mouth and then turn it in. And what happens is they'll hit it with their top of their mouth, and that's when that curls over. So that's why that's curled when you pull that in and you missed a fish, because they hit it, like they're coming up underneath it, and they pop that tail out of the way, and then they engulf it. Pretty cool. If you can search it on YouTube and find it, it's publicly available. Saltstrong. I don't know how you look at trout feeding or something like that. It's well worth a watch. But I went years fishing next to Ralph on the same boat, and same lure, same rod, thrown in the same spot. He would catch a fish bigger than mine. Well, he was dialed in. He was able to feel that, and that bigger bite, that softer bite. It's just like a feather tick, man. It's just like, did I feel something? Well, set that hook because it was probably a giant trout. You know, very often you're barely going to feel it because they're just not, when you feel it, it's like hitting part of their mouth. And I think you got this big bucket there. It's just like, it's just nothing but water pressure. You know what I mean? So you really got to be dialed in. And it takes, I always have to kind of get myself dialed in. And the other thing you'll notice, the behavior of a big trout is just different from a small trout. They're not going to blast one of these things out of the water 2 feet like a little trout will. They're going to come up, and they're just going to come up like this, and they're going to go slurp. It just doesn't even make a splash a lot of times. You never even hear it. Suddenly, whoa! That's usually a bigger trout that's kind of like slurping it in and not smashing it. So anyway, big trout. So catch and release. So we at release. Sure.
You spent 30 seconds on setting the hook because I hear conflicting stories about ripping out their lips and so forth. And just a quick download.
Yeah, you don't need to build ants a trout. Like, there's a trout, so here's something else that I've had to learn myself, is that the timing is very important, right? They'll suck it in and spit it out super fast. So as soon as you feel anything, you just got to do this, like react. Pull it up. That's all you got to do. But if you wait too long, it's too late. They've already spit it out, right? Whereas a largemouth bass, just the opposite. You feel that tick, it's like you got to count to 2 and then set the hook. Trout are totally different. It's all about that. It's like not even a full second. It's like a half-second delay till you set that hook. But you're right. It's just you just don't want to like. There's no need. I mean, even a giant, even a 28-inch trout, is a 10-pound braid is plenty enough for a 28-inch trout. You know, they're not going to fight like a freight train. So, is that good enough? Yeah. Yes, sir.
You don't use fluorocarbon, would you braid?
I'm glad you asked that, because again, I'm going to embarrass Ralph here. Same thing. I was drinking the Kool-Aid for years about you got to have a leader, you got to have a leader, you got to have a leader. And here he is with 10-pound braid tied straight to the damn jig and catching a fish that's 2 inches bigger than mine every time. And I learned that it's BS, man. It does not matter. In our waters, where the water's kind of dirty, it's not like gin clear. This time of year, you probably want to use a leader. But most of the time, our water's so dingy. Man, you know, think about it. Look at this crap hanging off. It doesn't look like a fish. You got these freaking giant treble hooks hanging off it. Do the fish care about that? Hell no. So, is that a fire alarm? Oh. Warning. So, yes, sir.
So on the braid, I noticed on the last slide you said something about the green.
Power Pro green, yeah.
Is that kind of because the water is green, so we're trying to match the water
Yeah,
color?
I think if you know, Ralph and I's opinion is that this is 10-pound Power Pro Spectra. If I have trouble seeing it, the fish probably are too. I mean, it's so thin, and it's the color of water for the most part. I think that's another reason why, you know, maybe if it was white or yellow, you would want to use a leader, but this green stuff, man, it doesn't matter. Plus, it's one or two less knots to have in your line, right?
So if you do use a leader, is there a certain length?
I usually go maybe 3 feet, something like that. And a lot of people do double uni knots, but I don't, because I always found that they break at that knot. With 10-pound braid, it tends to cut into that line, and it always was the weak point. I started going with a triple surgeon's knot, which is like you take the 2 tag ends and overlap them. Just do 3 overhand loops. Pull it real. You got to test it. Make sure you pull it real tight. In my experience, that's a stronger knot than a double uni, and it's faster to tie too. You can almost do it blindfolded. But again, it's only for like 10-pound braid to like 15-pound leader. Does that work really well for me anyway? I like to try to keep it simple, but so I got to wrap this up. So I just want to talk about this because it's super important. You catch that fish of a lifetime. You don't want to kill it if you're going to release it. Like most people, here's the problem: you catch a little one that you're going to 14-incher. What do? You sort of pull it up, you grab it, take the lure out, throw it in the water. How long did that take? 6 seconds. Well, our friends, our partners are at Keep Fish Wet. This is what their whole purpose is, to do the science behind how to let fish that are released survive. And here's the thing, man, 10 seconds is what they recommend. Think about it. Changes your entire mindset about what do I do? Like, I catch the fish of a lifetime. Well, you want to measure it. You want to get a good picture of it. Well, how long is it going to take? If you start counting, let's say, hold your own breath and start counting and see how long it takes to you to start getting blurry vision. Well, it's no different for a fish, but it changes your mindset in what you do. Here's what I started doing in a boat: is when I go out, I keep one of my release wells full of water. If I catch that fish that I really want to, it's a real trophy, I'll net it with a rubber net, take the hook out, and I'll just put it right in that release well first thing. Now I got time to get my camera ready, get my ruler ready, if I'm tagging, have the tag gun ready, then that fish is still breathing, right? I could take it out, measure it. If it's going to take me longer than 10 seconds, put it back in the live well. And you have to have a plan. Like, you don't want to just, like, oh, I wasn't planning to get a 25-inch trout. Now what do I do? You know, I don't have my live well full. Well, you're easily going to have that fish out of the water for 2 or 3 minutes. It's probably not going to survive release. So think about that. I would challenge you. So a couple things. First thing you do when you get out a new jig or a new plug, take your pliers, just mash the barbs. Those hooks are going to come out so much faster and easier. That way you're not going to lose any fish as long as you keep tension on it. And then next time you go fishing, I'm going to challenge you to just count how long it takes till you got that fish out of the water. You're going to be surprised how long. And think in your head, well, 10, 15 seconds is what it should be. And just try to apply it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm learning too, and I'm trying to figure out ways to make it work. But that'll make a huge difference in them fish 100% surviving, or maybe 30% of them dying. So just try to think about that. And I'm just going to conclude with this. Our catchphrase is release over 20, it's catching on. And we started posting these because it's about our kids and grandkids, right? Let's do it for them. Let's do it for the little girls and boys that have more fish to catch in the future than we have today. So that being said, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So,